Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the State of the AI Union. I'm your host, Laura, and joined with me today is CT Leong of the Go-to-Market Architects. CT, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me on the show, Laura. And over the past 10 years, I've spent a lot of time building two different SaaS companies, one venture funded, one without. To date, went from zero to over $5 million in closed revenue across all the companies. Now I'm running an agency focused on applying AI to help founders to build their GTM operating system so that their pipeline can run without them being involved 24/7. So great to be on the show.
Well, that's awesome. I'm sure lots of founders are excited to hear what that means, like having their pipeline run without them having to pay attention to it. But first, let's actually define what a go-to-market architect is. Tell us more about that role.
Yeah, so this role is, Clay kind of claims credit for coining this term GTM engineer. And I see like so many people on LinkedIn today talking about GTM engineering and, um, no, not to diss on them or anything, but 80% of it is a lot of just like diving into Clay and working Clay tables. I think the GTM architect, however, is able to combine like deep knowledge of go-to-market, both in terms of company building, in terms of being able to stitch together different tactics, different workflows, um, over and above your clay table, and apply that to generate real pipeline. And it has both a strategic and an operational function. So it comes with overall GTM strategy. So being able to clearly define your ideal customer profile or your ICPs, being able to align your positioning, messaging, and so on. But then also being able to take that down to the brass tacks, the exact specific channels that you're going to be using, the workflows that you need to run. What does that mean for Revops? What does that mean for sales enablement? What does that mean for your SDRs and your AEs? Um, and stitch that all together into a functioning system that takes a lot of the manual work out of uh, running GTM teams. So that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. I like to joke that, I was finally an engineer after 20 years. Uh, you know. Anyway, one of the things that you talked about was how, you are a second-time founder and your last company was Engage Rocket, where, you built the go-to-market team. And I'm sure that's where you realize, how important pipeline is or was. It's very near and dear to my heart, pipeline, this topic about it. Um, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think you misunderstood about Outbound very early on? And what are the things you realized about what it should be?
Good question. So I first started doing outbound more than 10 years ago when it was still fine to kind of buy one domain, one email address, and buy a list from somewhere, chuck it into a tool. Like at that time, I was using Mailshake, and I got it on one of the AppSumo sales, like lifetime deals. I think it's still like its net account is still alive.
Wow.
Um, and it was really just kind of spray and pray, and I tried different tools. I tried Plenty when Plenty was new, when they were in MVP mode. It was really crappy, very duct taped together. Um, and to me, that was outbound, right? Just like getting a list and just blasting the list and working the numbers. And everyone reads this. It's from Predictable Revenue, um, Aaron Ross, Jason Lemkin, um, and that was the Salesforce playbook for like 15, 20 years ago. I think that has really changed though. Just even in the last 18 months, it you like and so part of it hasn't changed, like in the sense that like outbound cannot exist in a vacuum. Like as an early stage founder at that time, like I thought, let's just hammer outbound as a single channel, and we can grow the business from there. And one of the things you quickly, well, it took me a long time, but founders that's much smarter than me quickly realized that you need to combine that with a slower channel, like content marketing, brand marketing. You need to have marketing as air cover so that the sales conversation becomes easier, so that your conversion rates to like a discovery call become easier, and much better. So I'm seeing outbound now as something that has evolved towards kind of just in time targeting for potential buyers in your market. So you have your entire TAM. I think there still should be some effort to try to contact your entire TAM at some regular cadence, but the real effort should be spent on who are those that are silently raising their hand in your TAM to say, I'm ready to buy, or I'm looking for a tool like yours. And that's where the engineering, the architecture, whatever you call it, like that's where like outbound is becoming more and more focused. And it drives value for both ends, right? Like you create value for the person who needs your solution like right now, today. And of course you derive value for your own company as well.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like, in the beginning, what we thought about outbound was more spray and pray, right? Let's just like sort of, send blast everybody an email or, send them some digital campaign. And now we are moving really more towards an ABM or ABT type of marketing and outbound strategy where, we're really more focused on the signals that people are giving out versus just giving out signal to everybody that might be willing to listen.
Yeah. And it's really just about being able to connect the outreach a lot better to the rest of the machine. Like it's not that outbound is ever broken, and it's just not connected.
Right. Right, right, right. Awesome. Okay, so when we so you started this company to help companies with their go-to-market motion and the setup of the systems and all the architecture around it. What are some things that you might look at first when a company comes to you and says, "Hey, we need help with go-to-market"?
It's a great question. I just had one this morning that I was talking to, and uh, I use this framework. It's a little bit hokey. It's a little bit not very software-y, because it comes from Alex Hormozy, who's not typically seen as a guru in software space. But he has this mantra, which I really believe makes a lot of difference. Like it's just more, better, and new. Right? When the first thing you do when you look at your go-to-market is what's working today, um, and what's stopping us from 10xing that. So if it's content, if it's SEO, like you know, I publish on LinkedIn, say 2 times a week, right? And um, it generates 2 meetings a month. Like, what's stopping you from publishing 10 times a week, right?
Mm.
And I mean, like hypothetically speaking, I know there are a lot of different limits and all that kind of stuff, but just really asking that question: what's working today, and why can we not do more of it? Because as most founders and go-to-market leaders and revenue leaders, like we are very attracted to new. Like we go to new straight away. Like what's the latest tool out there? What's the best like N8N workflow I can install to 10x my growth, whatever it is, right? But really, we should be looking at like the more, because that's working already. Like that's not like let's not break what's working. Let's juice it like 10 times, right? And then you start realizing, okay, there are limits, right? Oh, posting 10 times a day, like LinkedIn is gonna, they're gonna nix my account for whatever, right? So then, what's the limit? Like let's get to the limit in a way that doesn't kill us or doesn't like cause long term damage to our architecture, and then we figure out like what's better. How do we do this better, right? And better can mean a lot of things. Like I'm working on a landing page right now that's converting at 0.8%, right, to a demo. That's horrible. But it's also great news because I don't need to do anything else. I just need to figure out this landing page is getting 1,000, uh, like 1,000 hits a month of traffic. If I double this conversion rate, like instantly the business doubles. Like nothing else. Like I just fixed this. landing page which has like with some hokey headers and a broken form on it.
Mm.
Just fix that and you double your business. Like, why bother doing anything new? Right. And only after you've maxed those out, then you figure out new. Like, oh, we've had a PLG that's been working. It's gotten us to like 3 million ARR, 5 million ARR, whatever it is. We're kind of stuck. We want to look at Outbound as a channel. Now we talk about new, right? Like, so let's look at all your different channels. Like, okay, you've maxed them out. Let's talk about new. Like, how do we build new? And new doesn't come immediately. That's the hardest part, right? Like new, you get people. I get founders telling me this all day. Like I'm giving Outbound 3 months, and like, how have you done? Like, have you done any Outbound before? Like, have you converted any cold traffic before? No, zero. I was like, okay, 3 months is not going to cut it. You're
Mm.
looking more at like a 9 to 12 month journey at best, and if you hire a VP of sales who knows what they're doing, maybe 9 to 12 months, right? If you're lucky. But they always joke, right? That your best VP of sales comes after the carcass of your first one. So the first VP of sales almost always fails, and it's almost always the founder's fault because they don't know what they don't know, and they're just kind of hiring this guy hoping that he or she would figure everything out for them, and it just doesn't happen. Like you gotta have all the systems in place, and you hire a VP of sales to maximize that, rather than what I see a lot of founders do.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is let's do more of what works. Um, and and then figure out the new, because new takes time. And first of all, new is going to tell us, what is working, and then we have to do more of that anyway. So why don't we just concentrate on the things that are currently working right now, and just and it's okay if I'm hearing you correctly, it's okay if it's janky as long as it improves, the results of what it is today.
Yeah, more, then you fix better, right? So it's janky, sure, we make it less janky, then we do better, right? And then only after we're really doing great, then okay, let's figure out new.
Yeah. So Revops agencies have been around for quite a while. There have been various flavors of it. And you, I know, are doing a lot of work with AI, and you're an AI native go-to-market RevOps agency. So, what do you think are some key differences between the traditional RevOps and this new version of an AI native go-to-market engineering agency?
Hmm. That's a really good question, because the umbrella of RevOps and GTM engineering is just so broad today. Like, everyone claims part of it, and the reality is that they're all important, right? Like, they're all important. The maybe the biggest difference that stuck out for me was that typically what RevOps tries to do is to make your revenue data more observable, right? More visible, and like
Hmm.
how a company makes money um, is a little bit more clear to all the actors involved.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of overlap with um, GTM engineering or GTM architecture. Um, the main difference is how AI is used in this process. Because if, there are many RevOps agencies out there who really are like Salesforce or HubSpot specialists, right? Their job is to connect all the dots within Salesforce and HubSpot and, make the plumbing work well. And that's really super important. You got to have that um, uh, thing in place. I think what the aspiration is on the GTME side of things is, how do you get that 10x improvement over just those platforms that you have? And that's where um I this is something that I'm going like all in on this year, where y- it's almost like the UI less uh um agency or whatever it is, right? Like, everything can be run through the command line. If your tools are MCP or API native, and you're in Cloud Code, and you know how the machine should work, then it really becomes a function of what are all the workflows that we're running today which are the ones and prioritizing the ones that are closest to revenue and just auditing them, like which of these are efficient. And to the earlier framework, like, we're functioning like what can we do better? Like we already are doing, like everyone's already maxed out, like they're working 60-hour weeks. How do we do better on any of these? So like looking at like all the different workflows and just prioritizing them and then fixing them. And it's not hard. Like once you get to that point, just tackle it one workflow at a time. And that's what GTM in my ideal case, it's like RevOps gives you that dashboard, and GTM engineering hopefully gives you the self-driving car, right? That
Right.
it should be able to move.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. UI-less RevOps.
Yeah,
Everything going through the command line. That's really
yeah.
interesting.
I
So
spend 80% of my life in Cursor. Like I don't even look at GA4 or any of the dashboards because it's all there. Like,
yeah. So I actually have two questions about this. Well, let's start with actually what these AI agents do for you. What are some of the capabilities that you've gotten your UI-less minions to run?
hmm. Um, okay, so there's a lot of hype about this on LinkedIn and everywhere else. I'll be, yeah, I'm going to be as honest as possible about the capabilities, right? So one of the agents that I think of them as like agent teams, right? So it's almost like having staff um, on my team. So one of them is uh, they do like an audit, so like just a GTM audit of a company, right? So there's a kind of a supervisor agent that runs the show. There's another agent that is a specialist in just Google Analytics. So I plug that agent into GA4 with specific skills that I give it to be able to analyze the data that comes back from GA. Then there's another that's a paid uh, specialist. So that paid specialist then plugs into the Meta MCP. It pulls data from LinkedIn ads or Reddit ads, whatever it is, and then analyze that um, and talks purely about ad spend. There's another one that does like outbound. There's another one that, like for each channel, there's like one agent. So whole agent team's like 7 agents, and the supervisor just looks at this and coordinates the work, right, and tries to make sense. And if there's like conflict, try to deconflict the data, and puts together this report that says, all right, here's like the top 3 things that are blocking you today in your GTM. And then you have like 6 different reports that all like detailed reports that come with it also. And this applies for like pretty much anything. Cause you like, I was doing this recently, and there were like 4 different sources of truth. Like there's a Google spreadsheet somewhere, there's like HubSpot, there's like whatever. So like then in that particular case, you maybe need to build like a reconciliation agent that pulls information and tries to make sense of it. So that's kind of one example. Another example would be um, like just for outbound, right? Like this is a 5 agent stack. It's pretty linear in that sense. Like the first one just monitors buying signals. So it's a signal capture agent. You look at, so there are a few different tools that you can use, like Trigify, Apify, Clay, and all that. Like, and it just monitors things like new jobs, new company news, whatever. And you can design it whether you want to have it as a fixed number of companies with specific trigger signals, or you want to just monitor trigger signals and you pull the companies from there, right? So that's kind of one. Then the second agent deals with research and qualification, because not all of the signal that comes through is going to be signal. There's going to be a lot of noise. So you need an agent to be able to sift through this noise for you and qualify them and enrich that. And that all that comes in the third step, where there's a personalization of the outreach. So your research agent has just qualified and done some research on each of the valid ICPs that come through. Now you have an agent that personalizes the outreach message given your product marketing context, given you load it with certain skills around like how do you reach out in a way that doesn't sound AI, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
um, so you have to so you build all these skills into each of these agents. So this agent's job is purely personalization. And
Mm,
then there's another agent that does multi-channel routing. So there's like if you have a high score, for example, then you go LinkedIn, email, and if you're like high urgency, maybe go to phone, right? And you hit the SDRs. If it's kind of medium agency, maybe it's just email, LinkedIn, and so on. So that's the routing agent. You can use like cheaper LLMs for that. Um, and then kind of maybe mid step through, you want to insert like a QA agent as well, like somebody like a different model. So for example, if you use like Claude, Sonnet, whatever to generate the personalization, you maybe want to have Gemini, like Gemini Pro or Flash, whatever, looking at that to say, like with certain rules, like QA rules, to say, okay, this sounds very AI, this does not. These all pass this particular framework. We'll let it through. If not, like, okay, let's flag that and go back to the drawing board, right? And then like an optional one that you can put in is kind of like like a base layer agent which does learning. So this agent's job is to log the whole process and understand like what's going wrong, what's going well, and then the next time you run this, um, apply certain cheat sheets and shortcuts that all the different agents can learn from. So like those are just two different examples of what you can do.
Wow. I love it. Your army of agents. And I think what I'm hearing you say also, in terms of best practices is to kind of stack micro agents on top of each other versus trying to build one giant one with everything, because that way you can also maximize for both efficiency and for cost.
Uh, yeah, I think it's maybe less about cost and more about how effective any single agent can be, because
Mm.
your the nature of it's almost like thinking about organizational design, right? If you're thinking about building a RevOps team, you can't say hire like 10 people and say, all right, you guys all do everything, right?
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
have to split the team up. And uh it's very much the same with AI, except AI doesn't sleep and
Yeah.
doesn't need health benefits.
Yes. And it can do it while you're not paying attention to.
Yeah. And it does honestly, it does a better job than me. Like, honestly.
Okay, cool. Last question, then let's pivot here. So what advice would you give to a sales team that's trying to move from sort of more manual and traditional outbound method to AI orchestrated outbound? What should they do first?
Hmm. I mean, the first thing would be back to that point, right? More, better, new, right? So what is it that you're doing today that's working? What's stopping you from doing more? And if there's what's stopping you is I need to hire more people, that's where you pause and say, okay, then we need to think about better. Like, what are we doing badly today that we could do better? And I don't know, 60%, 70% of the time I see this, I don't get a good answer from GTM teams because their data is broken. So more often than not, one of the first things you need to do is just go fix your data, right? Like, and this is a lot less hard than it used to be in the past, because now, like, literally, you could just download a bunch of CSV files from like all the different systems you're using, chuck it into Claude Code, and say, "Hey, go make sense of this," right? And you'll get something back. And even with that very crappy process, if you were a bit smarter about it, you'll get much better output, of course. And so fix your data is a lot easier than it used to be. The second thing is start documenting your processes. Like a lot of sales teams are, well, a lot of teams in general, like product teams, engineering, like all equally bad at documenting their processes. Again, today, there's no excuse. Like the moment I ship anything in Cloud Code, like I just have a file inside that says, number one, log it to log it to memory, right? So just keep that as a markdown file, like what happened, right? And what did we learn? Like I have literally I have a folder called cheat sheets for all the different APIs that I'm running and all the different quirks that they have. It's like, oh, this particular JSON needs to be nested within that. And like, oh my gosh, like there's all these tiny little things that you never know until you get into it. But human beings cannot remember all of that, but chucking that into AI, oh my gosh, like just do that. Only then do you then start saying, okay, which are the biggest bottlenecks that we have and how I don't know. Like I'm 80 to 90% sure, and maybe I'm very biased about this. I'm 80, 90% sure that you can throw AI into any of these bottlenecks and just instantly make it better. Like almost instantly, right? That's my belief.
Wow. Okay. All right. Amazing. So figure out what's working now, do more of it, and then fix what you can, make it better, and then let's see whether we can throw AI into doing more new things. Cool. All right. So CT, you moved from Singapore about 2 years ago to the Bay Area. Um, and tell us a little bit about what's been different about starting a company in Singapore versus the Bay Area.
Well, you know this pretty deeply as well. I think there's just so many different areas that are different. In terms of just market size, if you're selling anything to do with software, anything to do with SaaS, knowledge type products, even consulting, really, you cannot have a you cannot have a better market than the US. And it's it's a little bit like saying I want to star in a Hollywood movie, but I want to stay in Singapore. Like
Mm,
it's almost impossible to like. And if you want to be part of that change, you have to be living and breathing that on a day to day basis, in the Bay Area. So I I'm very long on AI. Like I used to kind of go back and forth about um like whether it's a bubble or not. But I'm
mm,
very long. I'm very bullish on it right now still. Um, and you just have to be here. And then when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of like company building, this was one of the struggles that I had building company in Singapore, where you have um, essentially a really small market, and everyone that is super capable is pushing to win that market. So in
mm,
a like Singapore as a country is really rich, as you know, and but the real buyers of software, these are you have government and enterprise, like large enterprise. That's about it. And if you list them out, there's like 50 possible buyers um, that are in Singapore of any kind of scale, right? I mean, if you're selling into the US market, like I go on Clay or go on whatever, and I routinely come out with like TAMs that are like 50, 100,000. No founders running like tattoo parlors, like
mm.
software for tattoo parlors. And there are like 20,000 of them around, right? What I mean, there's just, yeah, the scale is just so much different that it doesn't, like, there's just no comparison. And yeah, from a work and business perspective, like there's just no question.
Yeah. What do you think maybe well, I guess one of the counters to that is I think many people say, well, Singapore itself might be small, but Southeast Asia is very large. Asia itself is very large. China itself as a market is huge. And while Singapore itself may be small, there's access to a lot of these other economies. What do you think maybe the community, the Singaporean community, or society can do to maybe help make it healthier for young entrepreneurs that are trying to access uh, these other regions, maybe access the scale.
Yeah, I love that you asked that because, if you go back, say 10, maybe a little bit more like 15 years ago now, there was a prevailing thesis that Southeast Asia was going to be the next like BRICS or next like big region because there was like 600 million people, kind of rising middle class, very low internet penetration, all that kind of stuff. And so like there was a lot of venture money flowing into the Southeast Asian ecosystem. And I mean, just 2 years ago, I think it was Lightspeed that published. It's almost like an apology for like why that thesis was wrong.
Okay.
And a lot of it came out because um, the markets are just so culturally different,
Mm,
and the labor substitution is so much less um, acute
hmm
because I was talking to another founder. He was telling me about the CRM that was like $10 and it did all this stuff, $10 per person per
mm,
month. And it could do all these things. And I thought, that's amazing. Like, why aren't you using it? They're like, dude, like I pay my guy $200 a month. I'm not going to spend $10 to give him a CRM to not
extra.
use.
Yeah.
So that was kind of one light bulb moment for me. And the other
Mm,
light bulb moment was just like spending 24 months trying to break into Indonesia, into the Philippines, and so on, and just realizing how different the buying behaviors were. in all of these different markets. And just because you've made it in a market like Singapore I don't think that policymakers understand enough about how much each of these different economies function differently. And that doesn't even count like going into North Asia, into like Korea, Japan, China. China as a whole it's spectacularly low spend on SaaS for its size, and you start wondering why. And India for another one, right? Like there's a lot of SaaS companies that come out of India, but if you ask any of them, like where they make their money, those that are making money, most of them are out here in the
Mm,
United States, and um, that's just a function of just yeah. I guess it's partly is per capita GDP, maybe partly is just the buying behaviors are different. Again, someone told me this once, like all SaaS is workflow SaaS because essentially you only build a software to make a workflow more efficient if that workflow is consistent. And I think because there's this heterogeneity of workflows in Asia, like with all the different cultures, like it's very difficult, very, very difficult to
mhm.
have that consistent workflow that works well for every single person. And so all kinds of customization need to come in play. And then that just drags out your product tail um, until the point that it's unfeasible to scale.
So it becomes expensive, basically.
Yeah,
Also.
it's super like capital intensive, and like now it's even worse, right? Like you have a whole bunch of vibe coders out there claiming they can do whatever, and like those of us in the know, right? They're not going to be able to recreate a Salesforce, but to someone in Asia who's maybe pissed off about Salesforce, and this guy comes along and says, "Hey, I can build this for you at a tenth of the price." You're like, why not? I'm give it a shot.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. So maybe one of your advice too for young entrepreneurs is spend some time in the Bay Area because that's going to open up their opportunities.
Yeah, or even like I mean, you're talking about international entrepreneurs like outside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say like location maybe like matters a lot, but
Mhm.
even before like yeah, I don't know. Like there's no easy way to skin this cat. Like I wish there was. I wish there was,
Yeah,
but there's I would say like if you want to be where the action is at, just like you have to be in the Bay Area.
you have to be here. Okay. Okay. Good. Awesome. Okay. So last question is: what is one food you really miss? One Singaporean food you really miss that you haven't really been able to get out here?
Um, I would say is your Um, it's really hard to get at here. So it's these like for listeners who don't know, like these little fried dough sticks. Um,
Like a
I
Chinese
used
fried donut, basically, but
yeah, it's
not.
like a Chinese fried donut.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, yeah, I ate that a lot as a kid. Um, I got a bit fat from it, but uh,
With soybean or with porridge, rice porridge.
plain man, like I just take
Yeah.
it and just I learned to take it with soybean later on, like the Hong Kong style.
Okay. Okay.
But like yeah, that's something that just we can't get easily here.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, CT. Thanks so much for being on the show. Any last words before we end here?
No, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on the show, and I hope this is useful for people listening in. You can hit me up, find me on LinkedIn or whatever it is. I'm happy to share more about all this crazy stuff that's going on in the GTM space today.
Awesome. Thank you. And to all our listeners, thanks for being on. And if you like this episode, drop us a comment, hit subscribe. Otherwise, we will see you next time. All right. Bye bye.